On the ground in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city, all but flattened in the fighting. We speak to those struggling to survive the bombardment, and we see firsthand the devastation wrought by Russian forces. Good evening. We begin our programme tonight with a special report from inside the devastated Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. Since the start of the Russian invasion, it has endured an almost constant bombardment of heavy artillery, with 80 shells a day and more hitting its streets, apartment blocks and transport hubs. Above ground, much of Ukraine's second city now resembles an obliterated ruin. Below ground, hundreds of people have been reduced to living in the trains and tunnels of its underground metro system. Our senior international correspondent John Irvine and his team were among the first to meet those eking out a living underground. This is his report on the devastating effects of the siege of Kharkiv.
We had just heard 4 explosions. And following the smoke, we soon found the apartment building that the Russians had hit with one of their cruelly indiscriminate pot shots. We got there before the emergency services to find some of the residents taking in what had happened with the matter-of-fact demeanour of people for whom this was nothing new or exceptional. "Where's my bag?" muttered this lady to no one in particular. Spring sunshine and the fact it was lunchtime when the Russians sending in the ordnance normally take a break meant several people, including children, were getting fresh air when the strike came in. Incredibly, there are no reports of any injuries. A Russian missile hit this place about 10 minutes ago. The apartment you can see burning is the home of an elderly couple who thankfully vacated the flat just 2 days ago when their son decided they'd stayed too long. How right he was. The building is in the hardest hit district of a city that's being attacked with, on average, 50 missiles and artillery shells every day. I spoke to the apartment owner, the son, who moved his parents out on Saturday. What do you think of the Russians? Kharkiv used to have a population of 1.4 million, but right now the pummeling it's getting is keeping people off the streets. However, despite appearances, Ukraine's second city is far from deserted. This man may look like he's boarding a train out of town, but he's actually walking through what has been for the last 2 months his front door. When the war began, families in the Saltivka neighbourhood entered this tube station not to catch a train, but to live in one, which they've done for 60 days and nights. The carriages quickly filled up, and so did the platform, where space is at a premium, like patience and inner strength. How do you find the inner strength to live like this? My son gives me the power. He's my strength. It's for him, for his sake, Yulia told me. The old USSR symbol shows how close the binds with Russia used to be, but times change, and kids being forced to play trains in a tube station the Russians are making them live in have blown those binds apart. Despite it all, these Ukrainians remain unbowed.
It's stressful, of course, a lot of people, noise, but no, we're holding out.
At least you're safe, I suppose.
Yes, we're safe. We have most of our needs fulfilled in here. So this could have been a lot worse.
You're trying to look on the bright side of life.
Yes, I think that's what you need to do in these kind of situations to survive and whatnot.
Down here, there's no difference between night and day. And such is the bombardment up top, many of these people spend both in the station. Their resolve is quite something. The Russians are at war not just with the Ukrainian army, but with the Ukrainian nation. Not everyone can pick up a rifle, but these people feel they're doing their bit, and at quite a cost. There are many reasons they choose to stay in their home city, but for some, one of them is resistance. The shelling has been relentless, but if at the outset the Russians thought they could bludgeon this city into submission, then 2 months later they look very much mistaken. John Irvine, ITV News, Kharkiv.
Well, in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, details have been emerging today about the visit by senior members of President Biden's administration. This map shows what we know about the latest situation in Ukraine. Russian-controlled areas are in red on the map there. Kharkiv is now right on the front line of the battle by the country's eastern region, along with Mariupol, which is still under attack despite a Russian promise of a ceasefire. Yesterday's visit to Kyiv by the US Secretaries of both State and Defence resulted in a promise of more help, a promise backed up today by Britain. Our global security editor Rohit Kachru is in Kyiv now. So Rohit, what can you tell us about what was said today?
Well, perhaps the most striking figure from the British Defence Secretary was this UK estimate that the Russians have lost around 15,000 troops during this conflict so far. That's right at the top end of the most recent estimate we heard from NATO. And for context, that would mean that the Russian military has lost almost as many troops in the last 2 months as the US military did during all of the bloodiest year of the Vietnam War. The British are also saying that around 2,000 armoured Russian vehicles have been destroyed or taken during the last 2 months. And of course, all of this is the backdrop as the Russians attempt to turn the page, pivoting towards the south and towards the east. And that is why overnight these two key figures from the US administration, the Defence Secretary and the Secretary of State, came to Kyiv. Perhaps more interesting than anything they actually said was the fact they were here at all. Around the moment they travelled in by train, that's when half a dozen sites on the Ukrainian railway system were being struck by Russian missiles.